Hello everyone, I'm Jairai, and today we'll be exploring the idea of whether or not premium point-and-shoot cameras like the Sony RX100 series is relevant today. And we're exploring this idea because the quality of smartphone cameras have actually seen tremendous improvement over the past few years, and it begs the question of whether or not the average person needs to carry around a camera anymore. Aside from professionals and prosumers, the average person is not going to carry around another piece of equipment knowing that their smartphone can easily replace that equipment. So, if your smartphone could take good enough photos and videos, why bring an extra camera around? Modern smartphone nowadays can shoot in RAW, and with the help of computational photography, we can get photos with high dynamic range, less noise, and with an overall image that we can be pleased with. The video quality of smartphones have also improved. Smartphone released nowadays have the ability to shoot in 4K, they have video stabilization, and they also have slow motion recording. And some premium smartphones even have the ability to shoot in 10-bit color, a feature that's often found in high-end cameras. Depending on the smartphone, some of these video features aren't utilized to their full potential, and often restricted by the native camera app. And this is where videography apps like Filmic Pro and MC Pro 24 come in and unlock that video potential for the smartphone. It allows for full control of the smartphone's camera. These apps allow for picture profiles like log and HLG to give your video more flexibility in post. Now here's an edited footage from my Google Pixel 4a. This is a $350 phone that's very similar to the Pixel 4. Not really what you considered a top-of-the-line phone, but rather a mid-range phone. This phone is priced significantly less than a lot of the premium point-and-shoots out there offered by Sony, Canon, and Panasonic. And it doesn't feature additional cameras for ultra-wide shots and telephoto shot. It only offers a 12-megapixel rear camera with a focal length equivalent to 27mm and an 8-megapixel front-facing camera with a focal length equivalent to 24mm. And additionally, the sensor size of the rear camera is measured at 1/2.55 inches. Now, I didn't use the native camera app to shoot these clips, but instead used MC Pro 24. There's too many settings that I can change within this app, and honestly I wasn't that experienced in it. So the only parameter I changed was changing the bitrate from 15 megabytes per second to 100 megabytes per second, while everything else is set to auto. So I just let the phone determine contrast, saturation, and the white balance for me. This is the audio of the Google Pixel 4a. This is without audio processing. And this is with audio processing, adding compressors, EQ, and noise suppression. Here we can see the camera's low light performance. I've set the ISO to 1600 with the shutter speed set to 48. So now that we've taken a look at what the smartphone is capable of in terms of photos and videos, let's see how that stacks up with our premium point-and-shoot, the Sony RX100 V. So this point-and-shoot has a bigger sensor than your average smartphone. It actually has a 1-inch sensor. It also has 20 megapixels instead of the 12 found in smartphones, and because of that bigger 1-inch sensor, it has better dynamic range. The RX100 V offers a 24 to 70mm zoom lens and has a variable aperture of f1.8 at the wide and f2.8 zoomed in. It also has picture profiles such as S-Log, HLG, and Cine. This allows for more control in post and allows you more flexibility in color grading. This camera also has a high frame rate mode that lets you shoot up to 1000 frames per second for extreme slow motion. But the only downside to this is that it records it at a reduced quality, and you can only use this mode for a few seconds at a time. It features a pop-out electronic viewfinder and has a built-in ND filter that's good up to 3 stops. This camera also has a flip up screen as opposed to a flip out screen, and in either case this gives you the ability to frame yourself better when you're taking a selfie or vlogging. And one pretty impressive feature about this camera is that it has the ability to shoot RAW in burst mode at up to 24 frames per second, and this is significant because a lot of the bigger and more expensive camera can only shoot at half that speed. Now the photo quality of this camera is actually pretty good. These photos were shot in RAW, so it gives you a lot of flexibility when it comes to post-processing these photos. Now when it comes to video quality, the RX100 Mark V is no slouch. It has the ability to shoot in 4K, though in 5-minute bursts, and you do experience a little small crop when you do shoot in 4K. It takes the focal length from 24mm to 28mm. I find that shooting 4K gives you the most detail and the best result even if the final delivery is in 1080p. You could also shoot in 120 frames to give you really smooth slow motion shots. This is better than the high frame rate mode because you can record for longer and it's at a higher quality. And since I like to work with my footage in post, I shoot in either S-Log 2 or Cine 2 just so that I can get the extra flexibility to color grade. I also like to shoot in these profiles since it preserves a lot of the dynamic range. And this is an audio quality test of the Sony RX100 Mark V. This is it without post-processing. And this is the audio with post-processing with compressors, EQ, and noise suppression. Now here's the low light performance of this camera. This was shot at f1.8 at ISO 1600 and with a shutter speed set to 50. So now that we've taken a look at both, is it time to retire the premium point and shoot cameras? For me personally, it's a no. This is because premium point and shoot cameras with a 1-inch sensor will always outperform a smartphone's tiny sensor. The smartphone can use computing to its advantage to alleviate the disadvantage of having a small sensor. Although it's pretty impressive, you still see the limitations. I mean, as long as the lighting is good, you will get good results with the smartphone. However, in low light, you see that the tiny sensor struggles quite a bit. Here, you can see the Pixel 4a doesn't capture as much detail in low light. You can also notice that the 4a has a lot more noise in the footage compared to the RX100. And keep in mind that I tried to keep the settings the same for both smartphone and the RX100. Now for the average person, I think that just having a smartphone as your main camera is enough. I mean, it takes great photos and it does a pretty decent job at video as well. And I think most people will be satisfied with their photos and videos just being good enough. Again, personally for me, premium point and shoot cameras like the Sony RX100 Mark V still has significance today. But I do believe that there will be a time in the near future where smartphone sensors catch up and start to challenge the bigger and more expensive cameras. And that's all I have for now. Hopefully you guys enjoy this little comparison video between the Sony RX100 and the Google Pixel 4a. I was actually surprised that the video quality of the Pixel 4a was actually good and was able to work with it. If you like content like this, I would appreciate it if you like, comment, and subscribe. And thanks for watching. Bye.